Well, as we start a new series this morning, I'm going to get into some true confession time, okay? It'll come from me. I'll start, okay? And here's my true confession. I use my phone way too much. I use my phone way too much. There are times where I notice that my phone distracts me from people I'm with, physically present with at that moment, including my family, including my kids, including my wife. I also, even though I know I shouldn't, I sleep next to it. It sits next to me while I'm sleeping on the bedside table, and it serves as my alarm clock. Oftentimes, if not every day, it's the very last thing that I look at before closing my eyes and going to sleep, and it's the very first thing I look at upon waking. Because it's right there, and actually, as we talked about earlier, it serves as my alarm clock. And so basically, this device is with me all the time. It's like an extension of myself. And I'm just confessing that I believe, and I think this is true about myself, and I'm not just saying it for the purposes of this series, I use my phone way too much. I'm on this thing way too much. So, now it's your turn, okay? If you feel that this is true of you as well, I just invite you, slip your hand up in the air. Yep, I use my phone too much. Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Everybody look around the room for a second, okay? This is all across the board. It's not 100%, but it's pretty close to 100% of people. We all agree that we use our phones too much. I'm going to put it away because I don't want to look at it. It disgusts me. Now, as we start this series, there's a few things that this series is not about, okay? And I just want to make sure that you understand that this is not what we're trying to say. This is not what we mean. This is what our series is not about right now, okay? It is not anti-technology. We're not saying all technology is at its root evil and we need to have nothing to do with any kind of technology. We're not proposing that we build our own neighborhood by hand and live there without electricity. That is not what we're saying at all. We are not trying to be anti-technology. We're not saying that you should take your phone and throw it away necessarily. Maybe you should, but we're not telling you that that's definitely what all of us should do. That's going to have to be God's work in your life, not what we're trying to say. So we're not saying throw your phone away, get rid of your phone. We're not suggesting a permanent fast from technology or anything like that. And we're also not saying during these next 28 days that you should abandon your responsibilities as a person, as a human being. However, shamelessly, I will tell you, this morning I am going to try to convince you to take 28 days to detox technologically, to detox from your phone, to see what God does when we steer our attention towards physical presence where we are at any given moment, and towards Him and His voice in our lives. We're going to look at John chapter 10, verse 10, and this is a little bit of a unique way of going about our message this morning. We're going to look at a verse here from Jesus, and we're going to look at it in a very tight scope of like how we're applying this to this area of our lives, this area of technology in our lives. Here's what John chapter 10, verse 10 says. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Now this verse shares with us our enemy's playbook in 3 words. And the context of this verse is in John, obviously John chapter 10, and Jesus is talking in this first part, he's talking about being the good shepherd. He says, I am the good shepherd. And he talks about having his sheep and that his sheep will listen to his voice. His sheep will hear his voice and recognize his voice, and his sheep will be near him. He says, I will protect my sheep. I will take care of my sheep, and they will come towards me. And then he talks about the role of the thief. And for people in this day and age that Jesus is speaking in this first century time, which there was a lot more going on with animals and farms and all of this kind of stuff. Not that we don't have them now, but most of us don't live on them or haven't before. And so they understood this idea of the concept of a shepherd and what it meant for Jesus to be saying, I am the good shepherd, and talk about us as his sheep. It's not an insult per se, but it is definitely just an understanding that we need the protection of our shepherd. And he promises to do that. But he also says there's a threat. And the threat is the thief. And the thief thief comes to kill, to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Now, we live in a world where the thief has different access points to our lives. And I think at any point in time, we need to be conscious and aware of the fact that it's not that evil has stopped working in our world just because we may not see a supernatural version of it in our day and age in this time and place, or we may not recognize it, sort of kind of quote-unquote supernatural or spiritual component of it, of our enemy at work. But he's going to work in the shadows. He's going to work in the spaces where we're not on alert, where we're not aware, and he's going to try to get a hold of our hearts and our minds. It's just the reality of life. Now, back in 2007, something really important happened on the scene as it relates to technology. And that was at the end of June, the very first iPhone was released in 2007. We have a photo of that. And it looks a little bit different than the phones that we have now. And it operated a little bit differently. Now, in a lot of ways, things stay very much the same. I mean, the basic feel and the look and all of that stuff has remained largely the same, but things have advanced in amazing ways. I mean, at first, no one had developed any apps to go with this phone because the phone didn't exist yet, so why have any apps? So all the apps that were loaded on your phone came only from Apple itself. So you might have maps, you may have an internet browser, but there was no Facebook on the phone. There was no Instagram. There was no Twitter or X or whatever. There was none of this social media existed at that time. It didn't even have news apps and things of that nature. So we think about all that has changed since that day. Now, I know there's probably like 2, maybe 3 of you who are Android users in this room right now. No, there's probably more. I don't know what the breakdown is. I don't care. I have no dog in the fight. Like whatever phone you use, the whole game was changed though when this thing released. And you could track it back then. Before this, there were Blackberries and different things that were going on. Personal organizers that you could access the internet with and all of that stuff. Computers started being pocket-sized is the bottom line. And this is the day when it started sliding towards this reality where it is the norm. In fact, just about everyone has an iPhone. And we've been through 17 plus different versions of the iPhone itself. And every version comes with multiple options. You know, you can get the plus, the big one, the little one, the slimmed out one or whatever. There's all these different options, but we're on iPhone 17 at this point. And I realize there are other smartphones all releasing. So there's hundreds of these things out there. And here's the reality today. Somebody, a missionary, a Zambian missionary, who I know from leading trips to Zambia back in the day, this couple, they were in town, and Mackenzie and I got to meet with them because we haven't seen them in years. They're Zambians. They live in Zambia. And they told us a fact that I held on to that really resonated with me. And I looked it up, and from what I can tell, this fact is a true fact, that more people on this planet own a smartphone than toothbrushes. There are more people who own a smartphone than toothbrushes in the world right now. And that seems a little inconceivable because we all in this room probably own both. But there are places in the world where not everyone has a toothbrush, but just about everyone still has a smartphone. And that's kind of a wild thing to even think about, that it's seen as more necessary to life at this point in our day and age all around the world than even something as basic as a toothbrush. The message title for this morning is The Price of Your Device. We all have the device, and it's not about the cost, the monetary price of your device, but more the cost to our relationships, to our spiritual formation, even our mental health. And we're going to look at these 3 tactics this morning of the enemy: steal, kill, and destroy, and to consider how it relates to our current situation. Now, I'm about to do something that I'm going to ask you to participate in that might be a little bit convicting, okay? I want you to get your phone out. I'm not going to do this very often. Get out your phone if you got it with you, okay? I can walk you through it step by step if you're an iPhone user. If you're not, you probably know what you're doing with your phone if you're an Android user, better than iPhone users anyway, okay? Because you picked that. You picked to be a rebel for a reason. So if you're an iPhone user, just open Settings. It's like a gray thing that looks like cog wheels or whatever. And then you'll scroll down, probably 2/3, 3/4 of the way down on that very first screen under Settings. And there's this little thing called Screen Time. Even though you're trembling now, click Screen Time. Okay, you may have actually gotten a notification. Sundays oftentimes they'll send out notifications about your screen time summary from the week before. Now, if you're looking at it now, it's skewed low because it's starting a fresh week. So what you need to do is you need to click See All App, Website, and Activity and start scrolling down a little, and then some arrows should appear at the top. Go back 1 week and see what it says. And now we're going to have everyone stand, and I'm going to say a number and have you sit down until there's one person. No, I'm just joking. We're not going to call you out. We're not going to call you out. But most of us probably have hours listed here on our total screen time. You can actually go in and you can see where that's broken down, like what are your most used apps. Now, I will say, maybe it's because subconsciously I knew this series was coming. I was starting to warm up, but this is probably my best screen time average in a long time, and it's still a lot. Do I dare say it? Okay, mine says 2 hours and 32 minutes per day. 2 hours and 32 minutes. Some of you, who whistled? That's rude. What does yours say? I demand to know. All right. But looking at it, most used was Maps, so I feel pretty good about that. Second most used was Messages, and third was a workout app. Yeah, look at me. All right. All right, but then after that, it's not so good. All right, so this tells you how old school I am. I spent an hour and a half on Facebook last week. Facebook, of all places. If you go back further, I had worse weeks. Trust me, I'm not going to read those ones. But last week, over 2 hours, well over 2 hours, almost, 2:32, that's to be exact. So as you look, now I'm hoping to see some numbers with fewer digits there, over the course of this series, because we're doing the fast. It means we're putting the phone away largely, at least for a lot of its other functionality. Now, bottom line, that this is stolen attention. That's 2.5 hours a day on average of stolen attention, and often in most cases. And we're dealing with this situation where this is, again, it's a part of our life, unlike almost anything else in our world. John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So tactic number one is that the enemy is coming in trying to steal. The enemy is trying to steal. That is the first tactic of our enemy. Now, this word steal, in the Greek, we can put the Greek up there, the word is klepto. Everybody say klepto. Now, we all know the word klepto, right? We might refer to oh yeah, that person's a klepto. They steal. That's exactly what it means. That's where that comes from. Kleptomaniac. Someone who steals compulsively all the time. And the idea can carry this thought that, there's semantic range in all of the Greek words, just like there would be in English words. There's a range of potential meanings depending on the use. But one of the ways you can think of the idea of stealing in this klepto way is that someone might be stealing from you in a sneaky way, like under the radar, without you being aware of it. If you think about, if you go to a certain place or into cities where there's a lot of tourists, you're told to be alert and aware of pickpockets. Someone who will come and take from you without you being aware. It's not necessarily by force, but it's I've taken that, you weren't even paying attention, and now it's gone. Or even if you've seen some of those videos, basically sleight of hand magicians functioning as pickpockets can take your wristwatch off of you while you're in conversation with them, and you don't even know that they're doing that. But they're able to distract and get a hold of you. And I think that's how our enemy is working in our world today. That's how he's stealing in 2026 in the United States of America. He's stealing by distraction. He's stealing by sleight of hand, by us not realizing what's going on. And big things are up for grabs when it comes to our time and our attention. This past fall, we talked about some of our three values, our three primary values as a church. Remember that? We did a series on this, a couple weeks per value. And the first one is that we would be clay. Then we would build unity, and that we would live sent. Those are our values. Be clay, build unity, live sent. Be clay being the kind of strange one, right? In terms of what does that mean? Be clay means being formable, being moldable by God, allowing Him to come in and mold us. And in reality, we didn't have to even say that our value is to be clay, because every person is clay. We are all moldable. Well, our point is to say we want to be clay as it relates to our relationship with God. We want to let Him be the one who is forming us. But the idea that maybe we're not being formed, that's just us lying to ourselves. We are all constantly being formed. The question is, what are we being formed by? Who are we being formed by? Who has an influence in our lives? And the reality is, if we depend on like church on Sunday to be our main formation vessel, then we are trying to have like an hour compete with the whole rest of our lives where we got these things buzzing in our pocket. We have screens in front of us on a desktop or on the wall with our TV, and we're constantly inundated with information. And this is all formational. It is all working to form us in some way or another. Catherine Price wrote a book called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And here's a quote from that book. She said, if you wanted to invent a device that could rewire our minds, if you wanted to create a society of people who were perpetually distracted, isolated, and overtired, if you wanted to weaken our memories and damage our capacity for focus and deep thought, if you wanted to reduce empathy, encourage self-absorption, and redraw the lines of social etiquette, you'd likely end up with a smartphone. There's a lot at stake, and there's a lot that this is impacting in our minds, in our lives, in our world. And we want to be clay as it relates to the Lord, not to our phones. We don't want to be formed by media. We don't want to be formed by social media. We don't want to be formed by all of the stuff we want to be formed by Jesus. We want to be formed into the image that he has created for us. Psalm chapter 119, verse 37 simply says, turn my eyes away from worthless things. Preserve my life according to your word. Now, if we're honest, we look at that screen time number, and we think about that time that we spend throughout the course of a week on our phones, not to mention the other devices. The average time, so this is where I was like, I'm kind of feeling good about myself for this last week. But again, that was a good week for me. The average time, according to statistics that I've seen online, is that the average person spends 5 to 6 hours on their phone per day. 5 to 6 hours. And the average teenager spends 7 to 9 hours on their phone each day. It's actually said, researchers have said that without change in the trajectory of all of this, the next generation will be the first to die with more of other people's memories than their own. So we're living in strange times. It's a little bit of a strange time. And we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and our families. So most of what we see on our phones is generously worthless, to be generous. Some of it's worse. But at best, a lot of what we see on our phones is worthless. And we think about, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you're like, oh, I'm going to go over to the living room. And you walk into the living room and go, why am I here? What did I come into this room for? Maybe you were coming to retrieve an item or to look for something or to talk to someone, but you forget why you walked into that room. I don't know about you, but for me, that's like 10 times worse when it comes to the device. That's how our hours get up there, because what happens is it buzzes because somebody texts you and you open the text and you read it and go, oh, yeah, okay. So you reply real quick and then you swipe up and then you're like, yeah, I wonder what's going on the gram. What's going on over there on Instagram? Let me click on that. And then you're like, oh, cute puppy. That's awesome. That's hilarious. Oh, that's an insightful quote. That's interesting. Oh, man, did you see this video from this past weekend? What a stupid thing to say. That's another cute puppy. Oh, let's keep looking. I want to see a cute kitten, And then you're like, what's the weather going to be like later? Oh, speaking of later, what did I have on the calendar? I don't remember. Let's go check my email. Oh, that's an interesting email. I got to reply to that right away. Oh, sale right now? All right, check that. Let me cross-reference that price to what they might have on Amazon over there. I wonder if there's anything secondhand on eBay. Your brain just goes crazy. And you end up going to all of these different things. It's like every time I close out all of my apps, if I open my phone again, 10 more apps get opened up. Like we just get drawn in. And I forget why I opened the phone and looked at the phone to begin with, because it just comes at us. And we're learning more and more that these app developers and these companies, they are literally designing their apps. They're designing their products to be addictive. It's on purpose. It's not an accident. It's happening on purpose. And so when we check our text, but that turns into our email, our other email, our Facebook, our Instagram, our whatever, all of these things, all of the various places we'll go in one sitting. Man, we don't even know what we open the phone with to begin with. And talk about worthless things. Most of what we're seeing is not adding anything to our lives. And so, but we're still there. And our attention and our time is being stolen without our even being aware of it. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The second tactic of our enemy is to kill. All right, we also have the Greek word here for to kill. We can say this one out loud as well. Thuo. This means to kill, okay? But usually this word is used in reference to an animal, which makes sense in the context since Jesus is talking about being the good shepherd and he's comparing us to his sheep. And so typically this would be used in reference to killing a sheep or another animal. It's like a slaughter. It's killing someone that you've drawn the animal into the slaughter. Oftentimes, we see animals, they don't know any better. They will go to the slaughter willingly. And that's what's happening to us in our current world as it relates to our enemy. We are willingly walking to the slaughter, killing our relationships, literally causing lifetime trauma or actually even death for our youth. Since 2010, 48%, there's been a 48% increase in self-harm ER visits for teen boys. 48%. That's huge, right? For teen girls, it's 188% increase in ER visits for self-harm. 188% increase. 2010, by the way, is around the time now where we're talking phone released in 2007. 2010 is becoming common for everyone to have a smartphone, and those smartphones are developing apps like social media apps that have that constantly in our place. We see in our face. We see that spiking, those numbers spiking around that time. There's been a 91% increase in suicide among 10 to 14-year-old boys, which is just horrifying to think about. 10 to 14, that there's any suicides, but the humongous increase. For girls, that's 167% increase. There's a book out right now called The Anxious Generation. You've heard me quote from it, talk about it before. It's by a guy named Michael Haidt, who's really the leading researcher in the area of how our devices and social media and all of these things are impacting the health and wellness, especially of the next generation. And he says these numbers are not just correlated with the popularity of phones. It's not just a correlation relationship, it's causation. It's causing this. If you are a parent of a teenager, a preteen, or even a child who will be a teen in the next 5 years or so, I cannot recommend enough that you read the book, The Anxious Generation, just to learn a little bit about what we're up against, what we're dealing with, and what the consequences are. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, I believe, reading this book, I believe it's a tool of the enemy. I believe it is a tool of Satan that's being used on us and our kids. Now we can say, that's the numbers with young people, and you can understand why things can be more harmful for developing brains and developing minds. However, things that are really this awful and this bad for a young person are also still not good for an adult. It's the same as anything that's physical. We think about, there was a time where people were having the same conversation when it came to cigarettes in our country, At first it was like, oh, yeah, this is cool, like everyone does it, and people did it. They didn't think about the consequences, they didn't know about the consequences, and then they began to learn about the consequences. And the reality is, smoking is really bad for everybody, but especially for young people, right? But it still kills older people. And so we have to be careful that we don't fall into this trap of saying, well, I can handle it, because, even though it's bad for young people, but I can handle it. It's still awful for both. 1 Peter 5:8 says to us, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour, looking for someone to kill. We need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and our families when it comes to this area. The enemy, the thief, comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The third tactic of our enemy is to destroy. To destroy. Very similar to the idea of to kill. But to destroy, that's our enemy's next tactic. Now, we have a Greek word here too, because we want to complete the lesson, okay? And we're opening up space on our mental hard drives so we can remember all these great words, right? All right, the third word for destroy is apolumi. Apolumi, say it. All right, good. I think that's pretty well pronounced, but my Greek is a little dusty. This is the idea of lack of thriving. There's a lack of thriving. And I have a graph for us here I want to throw up on the screen. This is a graph that I first saw in that book I mentioned before, The Anxious Generation. And this is a graph where that line is that's showing like around 2012. But you can see right at 2010 that a spike begins when it comes to, this is a graph, by the way, showing the percentage of United States undergraduates, so college students, diagnosed with a mental illness. So you see on the bottom, like there's ADHD, bipolar, anorexia, the addiction, and schizophrenia. Those are the ones that are on the bottom. The largest two is topped by anxiety, followed by depression. And so you see a spike begin in 2010. It kind of flattens a little, but then it starts to skyrocket and just take off. Again, this is along with, and if you overlaid the graph of like percentage of people with a cell phone with them at all times, like those would overlay very beautifully. Actually, not beautifully, but in a way that would open our eyes. And so you see that there's this change that happened. Something changed around that time, and when we already know what it is. And there's similar numbers as it relates to teenagers and younger people. And this is not a picture of thriving. This is a picture of things going horribly wrong. And multiple studies are showing across multiple different countries as well that all have similar access to phones, that these studies are showing that it's more likely to experience anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, narcissism, and sleep issues when your exposure to these devices increases as well. The biggest offender is social media. That's the biggest offender. And it trains us to do so many things. It trains us to compare. It trains us to not be present in our current situation. It trains us to care and value other people's opinions through their likes of our posts than anything else. And so like literally there's a value system assigned to the things that we put out there and to individuals. And it's no wonder that it's causing these types of disorders going on. And so over these next few weeks, we're going to work through 4 movements, and we have this book here for you. We've had this out for the last several weeks, but this is a one per person thing. Okay, so if you grabbed one for your family, you're going to need one per person. And this book has daily devotionals and reflections in here. It also has access to our group materials. There's going to be a video that goes along with it. You don't need to watch the video before you start the week. You can do the reflections and each day before you watch the video, or if you want to preview it, go right ahead and do that. Excuse the irony that there's a QR code to access that video. But it's just to make it nice and convenient. Technology is okay to be used, but we got to be careful about how we're using it. And in this series, we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. And so in your groups, in your life groups, your village groups, you'll watch these videos and reflect on what they mean. There's questions, some questions that you can ask and answer among your group. But then there's also these exercises that just helps us to walk through the process of this series of what we're trying to do and really make the most out of these next 28 days that will help us just to draw ourselves towards the Lord and away from captivity that we're not even know. Our attention is being stolen, our time is being stolen, and it's having a negative impact. It's killing and destroying us in certain ways, taking us away from thriving. So I just encourage you to do this. Whatever thing that you're compulsively doing on your phone, we've got to get rid of those things. I find myself, one of the things I compulsively do, and I've been over the last several months deleting more and more things off of my phone as much as I can. I'm down to just that old school Facebook app. I don't have Instagram on my phone. I don't have X on my phone or anything like that because I was realizing that it was starting to not have healthy results in my life. But I will find myself opening the phone out of habit. And then because there's not really anything to like look around at, I'm like opening random apps. I already know what's in my bank account, but I'm opening the bank account app because it's a compulsion. And so for myself, the goal over the next 28 days is to get rid of that compulsion. That as soon as I'm bored, I don't reach for the phone. That I don't just open it when I'm thinking about, or when I'm dodging something, or wanting to distract my mind with something, and then open all these random apps and seek out something to fill my mind with. Instead, just to be present right where I am. That's what I want to do. So the 4 movements, and this book will lead us through these 4 movements. The first movement is to detach. That's exactly what we've been talking about. Just detach from the device a little bit. Just detox. After 28 days, you can determine, you can go right back to your same habits if you want to. Hopefully you're able to evaluate what's helpful, what's not. But after 28 days, you don't have to continue to detach. You can reintroduce back in however you see fit at that time. But for the 28 days, we encourage you, and that will start in week 1. We're just detaching. And then week 2, we'll move into discovery. You'll start to notice maybe the times where you have the urge to go back to the phone or where you miss it the most. Sometimes we're covering stuff up in our lives. We're covering negative feelings or emotions. If we start to feel a certain way, or anxiety of any kind, or boredom, like we just go to, and you'll start to notice that in that discover phase. By week 3, you'll begin to delight. Here's why, okay? This is from Michael Haidt. Our brains release chemicals, right, for joy. And this dopamine release happens. And our phones are known to cause a dopamine release in our brain. When it buzzes, there's like an excitement that happens. And that happens in our brains. It's a scientific thing. It's a reality. It's a fact. And over the 3 weeks, as we disconnect from that dopamine hit, we actually get back on track, because if it's releasing all the time, it no longer has an effect, right? It's like any other addiction. It's like they talk about that when it comes to drug use. You know, the same amount does not cause the same reaction, and that's why people end up amping up their drug use to any amount is dangerous, but to potentially fatal amounts, because they are seeking that same rush from the first time, but it doesn't work that way. Our brains have a similar trait when it comes to the dopamine release. And so our receptors get back in tune after a few weeks of the detox. And then you'll begin to delight in regular life the way that you're designed to. And it won't be that same sort of washed out feel that can happen, literally, from being on our devices too much. And then lastly, the 4th week is to decide. And that's just about habits going forward. What kind of limits are you going to set on yourself? No one's going to make you do that. And by the way, we're not trying to be legalistic with any of this. This is about us trying to seek the Lord and improving our lives and being available to Him and open to Him. So we'll just wrap up with a few quick sort of practical things about how to participate in the digital fast, some suggestions about that. For one, we want to make sure you have this book, okay? But that's not going to come up on the screen. But work through the book. We've got tons of copies. There's some out on the table. If we run out, we've got another box, all right, under the table. All right, so make sure you get one per person, whoever's going to participate in this. If you're a teenager, you should be doing this. You should be participating in this as well, because this will be good for you as you seek to just have a presence in your life. All right, so first thing, make your smartphone dumb. That's the first step in participating in the digital fast. Practically speaking, that's the first goal. We're not saying turn it off and put it in a drawer and we'll see it again in 28 days. We know that that's not how life works. We need to be able to contact people. We need to be reachable, all of those kinds of things. You may have a situation where you need it for work. You need to have work, you may even need to have work email on there. Hopefully not, but that may be a necessity. But we're going to make our smartphone dumb. So what that means is you're going to go in, you're going to open it up, and you're going to look at each app on your phone, and you're going to analyze that app and think about that app. Is this distraction or is this utility? Is this something that helps me live life, or is this something that distracts my mind? So here's some examples of distraction apps. Social media, hands down, right? Obvious. Games, steals our time, steals our attention. News apps can be a distraction. Now, I'm not proposing that you don't engage with the news at all over the next 28 days. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't necessarily need it in your pocket, and you don't need it to be the first and last thing you see in your day. And so that's my encouragement. Anything that you can move over to a computer or a tablet, move it over to a computer or a tablet and get it off of the phone. So that would include the news apps, shopping apps, okay? YouTube, you'll probably save money over the next 28 days too, by the way. YouTube, even a web browser, if you think you can afford it, would be a great thing to get off of your phone or to lock up. You can disable some of the stuff as well. All right, so that's one thing. Those are the distraction apps. Utility apps would include like your phone function, right? After all, it's still, even though it's not used for this very often, and those of you who are millennials like me or younger, you have like a negative reaction to the idea of using the phone part of your phone. Like, it's a real thing. I feel it. Every time, like, do I text or do I call? I text. But yeah, keep your phone app there. You should keep your texting. You might need to keep your calendar. Definitely need maps because none of us know how to get anywhere anymore because we need the maps. Maybe airline apps or travel apps. Maybe the weather. Okay, these are utility things. Your calculator, like stuff like that. Those are utility apps as opposed to distraction apps. Okay, so we did talk about having an app to add for this series. That is no longer available. So we're not going to be using that app. So we're just going to go and we're going to manually erase and use our screen time app to observe the progress as we go. Second thing we want to do is eliminate notifications. At least really reduce notifications. One thing that I did a couple of years ago is I started living my life on do not disturb. Most days my phone never leaves what I call sleep, what it calls actually sleep mode. Like it just eliminates all notifications. It still gets them, but it doesn't ding or doesn't vibrate every time a notification comes through. With the one exception of when my wife calls or texts me, that will break right through. And if people, I think at least on my favorites list, if not anyone, I think maybe anyone, if you call twice in a row, then it will break through, do not disturb. People in my life probably get driven nuts by this, but they've also learned to adapt, okay? And so I don't miss stuff that I have to get most of the time, but I also am not constantly being distracted and pulled from one thing to another throughout the course of my day. That involves when I'm trying to focus on something for work or if I'm with family or whatever, my phone's not constantly lighting up and alerting me and trying to get my attention. So you can either use do not disturb, or even better would be just to shut off notifications for anything possible. And I encourage you, even texting, I think we have been conditioned to think that we need to be constantly available. But that's not true. The world will continue to spin even if you don't answer your text within 10 seconds. I promise you. And that will be a freeing thing to learn. So challenge yourself. Whatever you're comfortable with, push beyond that. Push beyond it and try something during this period of time. The third thing is to focus on intentional presence in your relationship with God and others. This is sort of on the other side. We're trying to eliminate as much as we can when it comes to screens. We've talked mostly about phones, but if your thing is to sit there with the iPad and do the same thing, don't do that. If your thing is to every single night you sit there and you turn on the TV and you watch sitcom after sitcom or whatever, try to pare that down, even eliminate if you can. But I'm most focused on the phone because this thing travels with us at all times. It's like an extension of our bodies, and we want to try to break ourselves of that because we weren't built to live that way. But in the setting of that stuff aside, we'll begin to realize that we have focus that we can then place on where we are in our relationships and in our relationship with God. This is best done in community. If you're in a group, that's a great thing. I encourage you to even amp up your group meetings to be able to go through this material during the next month, or to do this in your home, or find an accountability partner, maybe a friend from church or even someplace else who might work through this with you. There's also, by the way, again, this is kind of mixing the technology with the lack of technology, but if you're into this kind of thing, there is a daily podcast. It's about 5 minutes long that will just kind of help you reinforce some of the thoughts from the book and give you a thought of the day. So wherever you get your podcast, just search the Digital Fast. It will pop right up. But according to the creators, I'm going to leave you with this thought. According to the creators, 100% of the people who they asked after the fast, who participated, 100% are glad that they did it at the end of the day. And so again, we're not trying to make a legalistic, rule-keeping type of environment, but we do, I believe, I really truly believe that you will learn something, that you will gain from participating, going all in. This is definitely one of those things that whatever you put in is what you'll get out. If you kind of do it halfway, you'll be lucky to get half of the positive results. Really, we have to engage with it fully to retrain our brains to actually truly detox our nervous systems and to just regain our attention and our focus on what's going on in the world directly around us. So I encourage you, this is part of our value, to be clay, to be more formable by God, not by the things of this world. So jump in and see if this improves your mental health, your focus, your clarity. See if it gives you more space for real relationships around you, and most importantly, more space to hear from God. Now, there's however many people there are in the room, there's probably just as many arguments going on in your mind about why this shouldn't really go the way that I'm proposing that it goes, or why it's okay, or why you need to use your phone to read your Bible, or whatever else. And those things are up to you to determine. Like if you're like, I do my quiet time using the Bible app on my phone every day. I couldn't handle it because things pop up, right? And there's other widgets are there. But if you can, and you can truly just lock in on then you can make that determination however you want. It might be good to try something different and open a physical Word of God, but we're not being legalistic about this. This is up to you to determine. At the same time, be honest. Maybe ask the people in your life if you have a questionable thing, like, do you think I should go that way or a different way? Yeah, talk to your best friend or your spouse or someone in your life group or whatever it might be, to just guide you and help you make some of those determinations. But my prayer is that over the next 28 days that you will regain some of your focus, that you will see the benefits of what can be brought to us as we detox and disconnect and put our brains back to our originally intended wiring. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to close our time with some worship. Lord God, ultimately, we want to know you. We want to draw close to you. We want to run and flee from the enemy and his tactics. Lord, we know that our attention and our time is being stolen. We see that. Most of us see that. We can sense that. We know it's not for our thriving. We know that you are for our good. As Jesus, you finished that verse, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Abundant life, a thriving life. That's what you want for us. And so, Lord, I just pray that you would just open our hearts, that you would make us willing and able to step into this time. That will challenge ourselves and one another in a positive way to draw close to you, become a little bit more disconnected from our devices and more connected to each other. God, whatever anxieties or fears that we may have lurking in our hearts behind this, would you just reveal those? Bring those to the surface now, Lord. Help us to deal with those and be able to move in a positive direction, Lord. Help us not fall for any tactics of our enemy or even ourselves, our own minds that want to drag us aside and lead us astray. So Lord, we're just going to take a second. I pray that you would do that you would surface any lies that may be going on in our hearts and minds, any of those arguments that we're making internally about the idea of doing something like this. Lord, would you bring those up? Spirit, would you speak your truth over those in this moment? As we just take a second to reflect silently. Lord, by virtue of being human, we are constantly being formed. And what we declare right now, Lord, is that we want to be formed into your image. We want to be like you. Lord, over these next 28 days, and this really kind of focused on one area of our lives of this application over the next 28 days, would you, Lord, just make us more aware? Would you make us more present? Would you form us more into your image? God, as we put one thing down, we pick something else up. May we spend more time in your presence in prayer and in your word. May we spend less time looking at worthless things. Lord, make us more like you. Pray this in Jesus' name.